I'm the operator with my pocket calculator.
So, does everybody want to take a stretch? Or, Guten Morgen. I'm going to talk about something a little different. I call this slide rules and historic calculating instruments as art forms, but I'm really going to be talking about slide rules and calculators as art forms and slide rules and calculators in art forms. And I'll show many examples. If we first look at this slide rule, has anyone seen this one before? This is a Henry Sutton spiral slide rule from 1655. This is one of the oldest slide rules that we know of. And it's a spiral scale that winds around. They're in groups of threes, I think, for the number scale, the tangent scale, and the sine scale. And this is, it's interesting. This is on the back of an astrolabe. And the astrolabe dates to 1550s. And it was made for a king of England. And it is really very finely engraved. It's probably one of the nicest engraved slide rules I've ever seen. It's on a large diameter brass disc. Up here, there's a crown, which is sort of indicative that it was made for royalty. And here is a ring for it to be hung by. This is in the National Maritime Museum in Greenwich, in London. And I guess, see, it was made for King Edward. So I view this as probably the most attractive and most beautiful slide rules that I know of. Actually, I'll show you later, I actually made a replica of this, a full-size replica, and I have it in my office. Here's another very beautiful slide rule. You know, beauty is in the mind of the beholder, but this is La Apolette. It's a French slide rule. It's a spiral scale again, and it has some very unique features. First of all, it's shaped, the disc is shaped like a spiral. The radius increasing as you wind around the disc. Secondly, that I always find interesting is the cursors. It has two, it needs two. The backside here is shaped like a human leg. That's so you don't use that as that edge as the indicator for making your calculations. Another interesting feature I've never ever seen on a slide rule before, but there's a scale here that winds around and comes here, and it jumps across another scale and comes over here. So there are lots of interesting details. This outer edge is designed to help you get more precise results. Yeah. So this one I like too also. Actually, I have three of those, and I will show you them. I have all three sizes. Here's a Tröger Rechenwalze, and I like this one again from the artistic point of view in that the celluloid scale surfaces here have mellowed with age as the celluloid has outgassed and caused the plastic to change color. It's nice contrast with the black stand, and then the angle of the photography also enhanced this as an artistic form. Technically, the Tröger is most unique of all the cylindrical slide rules, in that on a normal cylindrical slide rule, each line repeats half of the previous line. On a Tröger, each line repeats 2/3 of the previous line. I know of no other Rechenwalze that does this. This is an American slide rule. It's on celluloid, a thin piece of celluloid. It has elephant ivory simulated grain. It's simulated ivory surface. It's more than a slide rule. The upper part here is a protractor. And all these little angles, all these numbers here are hand drafted and transferred by some transfer process to this piece of plastic, a piece of celluloid. Again, it only needs one indicator because this lower part of the disk rotates. I only know of 2 or 3 of these in collections. This is the oldest of American slide rules. It's made on a sort of a hard pressed board. It's the Palmer computing scale. It's decorated on the edges. There's all kinds of gauge constants around the edge, and of course, and there are no cursor. You just turn this internal disk, and you relate your calculations to the outer scale. This is from 1850 or so. This is first. I think it's the first American production slide rule. These are common in the United States. You can easily buy one on eBay frequently. On the back side, there's a different kind of instrument, usually. Nathan, this is the one I was talking about. This is a Ross precision computer. There are 2 versions of this. This particular version was made, the scale's made of a celluloid disc, and it's underneath this aluminum disc, and all you see of the scale is this, through a window, are each of the 20 or so windings on this spiral scale. So it's a long scale slide rule, and to me it has this artistic quality. It actually has a little short slide rule here, and this one you make your calculation to 2 or 3 digits on this slide rule, and then the index on here will point to the winding on which the result appears on the spiral scale. This slide rule was made by an immigrant from Russia, from Malcolm. I have a memory loss here about where it came from. But anyhow, the maker of this was a graduate of Harvard University Engineering School in the early 1900s, and he made these out in California until about 1930. This is also a very attractive slide rule. It's a circular slide rule. It's from the Soviet Union. And I have one in my hand I'll pass around. This is the copy that I have in my collection. As you can see, the color is the contrasting color of the inner disk with the outer ring is sort of very mellow colors. The disk is made of aluminum and it has an enameled surface, very finely done, and all these are little machine spots on there, and they're designed so that your thumb or your finger can push against them to push the disk around, so your finger doesn't slip on the face. This is not very old. This is in my collection. I believe the book that came with it says 1984. Yes. And the purpose of this, Nathan, who knows the purpose of this disk?
Actually, I got the Russian-speaking friend. Clearly, it's an artillery calculation.
Yeah.
You have to decipher all of it.
But also, I think it could be used for most of this, the scales they could be used for surveying also. It's a similar kind of calculation. Yes, yeah. But it's the most attractive, and I'll pass this one around. This is Wolfgang's, in fact. He bought it here at this meeting. And so Wolfgang actually, just before we started, he had made a sprint back to his hotel room to get it. So I was surprised he had so much energy to make his presentation. So, I decided that sometimes it's the way you present a slide rule, whether it's an art form or not. And here we have a Hannington gridiron. It's in my collection. And I've taken a photograph of a, oops, gotta watch my thumb goes here. I've taken a photograph at an oblique angle. I've taken the slide part out and laid it on the object. It's made of boxwood, I believe. It's normally in a wooden box. And it's a long scale slide rule. It's designed for precision calculations. And of course, this is one of the most well-known slide rules. It's easily available. Maybe it's expensive. But this is a Thatcher. And again, how you take the photograph, whether you just take it face on or whether you take it at an oblique angle like this, increase its artistic qualities. From my perspective, it does. Here, this one has a magnifying glass, which makes it interesting. These slide rules, this one's in perfect condition, and it dates, I think, from the 1930s. I think this was on a banker's credenza in his office and never got used. It was just a conversation piece for people who came into his office. However, many of these were used heavily. Some are very badly damaged. If they get wet, those scales are paper and they can peel off. And those, I believe, were used often on a tailgate of a vehicle for a land surveyor. He's out in the field, he's making measurements and making calculations, and the instrument gets wet. This is American. I think this was made for the insurance industry. And it's two drums. There's two drums side by side. And it's a helical scale on each of the drums. Again, it's a long scale device. This is quite old. I don't have the date there and I can't remember it, but I think it's from the 1800s sometime. And again, it has some sort of artistic quality in itself, but again, how you photograph and what the background color is, it makes it more interesting. This one we will see here. This is at the Arithmeum. This is a calculating machine, and has a lot of brass components, and I'm not sure whether this is ivory or whether, well, I think we'll find out. What? Bone?
No, it's email.
Yeah, enamel. Okay. Oh, enameled. Oh, yes. So we're going to see this one on our travels through the museum. Here's another very nice-looking calculating machine, and it's here in the museum again. And we'll see that. That one, I think it's brass, and it's developed its own patina with age, so it's not shiny brass. I know in the people who, pardon? Replica. That's a replica. Yes, it's a replica, but it's a 19th century replica, so it's not a new replica. And again, we'll see that one. And here's another one from the museum here. Yeah, I kind of like that one, so I wanted to. It's not in the paper, but I'm showing it here. And again, that's a replica also. And here's one of these pinwheel calculators. I think that this may have been painted black originally. No. Very often they've been painted black, and the black has been peeled off, and then the under brass has been polished. But Timo knows more about this. Timo. Yeah, only the ordiners. Yeah, but again, a very attractive calculator to display. Here's the reverse. Here is a slide rule in a painting. This is Sir James Hopwood Jeans, a mathematician, a British mathematician, and here in his hands he has his slide rule. And I guess, do we know which one that is? It's got a magnifying cursor on it, in fact. And it's from Punch magazine. And I think it's a watercolor. Here's a portrait of a gentleman, and in his hand, this is dated 1824. I got this from Peter Hopp. I have him to thank for getting these two and publishing about them. And in his hand, I believe there is a pair of dividers here and a rule. I think it's a Gunter rule with a pair of dividers that he is using. And this is Frank Whittle, one of the inventors of the jet engine. And if you look closely, again, this is a painting. And if you look closely, he has a slide rule in his hand. It's from 1936. This is interesting in that this is an engraving. And I don't know the source for this. I found this on the International Slide Rule Museum, a website that Mike Konchek has created. He has lots of things like this. But so here you have a classroom, and they're learning to use a slide rule. Everybody in this classroom has a slide rule in their hand and are intently looking to solve a calculation. I think here's their professor. He has a slide rule in his hand too. But look at this. In the back of the room, there is another student demonstrating on a large slide rule, and no one is watching him. Notice? Yeah. It was a fake? Pardon me? It was a fake. Ah. Okay, okay. So, I show this. It's not a painting, but it's a photograph, and it's interesting from the artistic point of view. This is at Dartmouth College at the School of Engineering, and I live in Hanover, New Hampshire, where Dartmouth College is, and I have a friend who's a professor there, and he has shown me this. If we look, it's one of the few cases that I know of where there is a student using a Thatcher cylindrical slide rule. He's actually using it. Others have different instruments. There are surveying instruments in the background. And this is dates to 1894, 1895 in the classroom at Dartmouth College. This is also quite interesting. This is a painting, by the way. And it's a cutout. This is a full-size, life-size painting of a man. His name is Terman. And he was early developer in the computer in Silicon Valley. And so what this is all about, what is this all about? You see a slide rule there? And he is standing alongside the road, and he's got his hand out like this. This is what I used to do. I had to go 1,000 kilometers from my house to Michigan Tech, where I studied engineering, and I would do it this way. But this is a little different, because on the back of this full-size man hitchhiking, I mean a cutout of a man hitchhiking, are instructions on where to take him. And he was taken all the way from MIT in Massachusetts, all the way to Palo Alto, California, where Silicon Valley is, and he made it there safely. Yes, it took months to get there, but he made it there safely. So he hitchhiked across America.
How long did it?
I couldn't find that detail, but I think it was 3 or 4 months. And he's one of 4. There were 3 others that they did. This is, I think, a student project.
And I had a GPS device also mounted on the spec, so
yes.
they could locate it and see how it makes progress towards California.
Yeah. This is in my collection. This is from Italy. This is a statuette figurine. It's maybe it's about this tall. It sits on next to my slide rules in my slide rule collection. This is a caricature of an Italian professor, engineer. Yeah, you all look like that. Yeah, no. He's got a slide rule in his hand. It's made of porcelain. And he's got a bow tie on, and he's got glasses on the end of his nose, and he's got long hair, and he's got a professor's cloak on. All of those characteristics of an engineer professor. And this was sold as collectible, which was produced for a series profession. They have these for dentists and for mechanics. They have it for all kinds. And I managed to find this on eBay one time. I've not seen another one, but I'm sure there are others. I'm not sure if it was produced beyond 1970 or not. Have you seen this, Wolfgang? No?
There's one on eBay at the moment.
There's one at eBay at the moment.
I sent you an email. Yeah.
Warner, did you hear that? Huh? He just said there's another one on eBay. Yeah. Okay. Now, this is a slide rule with a computer chip piercing its heart, and it's made by a very famous person, Warner Rudusky. It's in your garden. Is that correct? It's in his garden, in the backyard of his house, and yeah, this is made to honor the end of the reign of the slide rule as the engineer's primary calculating device. This is from Warner. This is Neil Armstrong, a statue on the campus of Purdue University, and Neil Armstrong was the first man on the moon. You know that? And I've presented at a paper at the National Astronauts Institute near Washington, D.C. I presented a paper on slide rules in the space program. All the Apollo mission to the moon, all of them, the astronauts carried slide rules. There actually was a little pocket on their sleeve, and they had a Pickett slide rule in that. They had no handheld calculators.
And Gemini program also.
Pardon me?
And Gemini project.
And Gemini, yes. The first mission that had a calculator was in about 1972 or 1973. But up until that time, they all carried slide rules, and they may or may not have used them. We don't know. The computer, there was a computer board and a computer at Mission Control on the ground, but I think that the Mission Control computer was communicating with the computer in the space vehicle. And so the astronauts really had very little calculating devices of their own. So here's Bolton, Watt, and Murdoch. It's in a bronze sculpture on Broad Street in Birmingham, England, where Carl has told me that these three guys invented or at least one of the three have invented the Soho slide rule. So is that right? Yeah, Carl told me that. And if you see this here, one of them has a slide rule right here in his hand. This is a blow up of that. So I show this one because it kind of shows in action in an artistic way how this slide rule is used. It has a scope on it. This is used for surveying, for doing contour maps in the field, and this is a plane table. We call this a plane table in which the map is drawn, and this instrument is used to determine the distance that an object is away, or point is away, and the elevation difference. And the slide rule is used to make the calculations. Here we have an advertisement. A cartoon character. He's got some sort of Greek symbol. He's got a winged helmet on, and a staff here in his hand, And I believe this is watercolor, and they're trying to sell with this Daiwa slide rules. And here's here's an advertisement for a Pickett slide rule, and it has, it's a painting, a watercolor, I believe, and here's the Pickett, and here's some other objects, a cube and a sphere, and here's a hand holding all of this. The exact meaning of it all, I'm not sure, but it's that composition that is bringing your eye to the slide rule. Here's an advertisement for Kuffel and Esser when they were in Hoboken, New Jersey. This probably dates to about 1900, I think. It actually was for an exhibit, and it has a slide rule here, a K&E log-log duplex slide rule, and other instruments that Kuffel and Esser sold, like a transit. Yeah, it's hard for me to see the other objects. This is the United Engineers was a structural engineering company in the United States, and they made a lot of ads in magazines trying to get new business. And in this case here, we're showing the mix: the engineer with his slide rule, and the worker with his cutting torch. That's what it's showing. And again, this is a painting. Here's another one, again by United Engineers. We have a section of an I-beam here. We have a slide rule, a pair of dividers, and a triangle. I think this is actually a drawing T-square, and the plans. So all of this is put together, and I think even kind of rocks or something up here, and this section of I-beam, kind of indicating what their business is all about. Now, this is a very famous person, and too bad Peter Hopp is not here, because he has been seeking a picture or a painting of William Oughtred with a slide rule, and he's never been able to find one. So, so he can see one, I actually have created this myself. And I took the book out of his hand, and I put in this circular slide rule. This is from Brown. John Brown, I think, in the 1660s. It's in the British Museum, and this one, and then on the lapel here, I put an Oughtred Society pin and the British slide rule circle also, so we know that he was a member of these. Yeah, he's even got a little smile on his face. So. This is from Otto. He sent that to me as an example of how to photograph a slide rule in a more artistic way, a way you can present it. This is a Faber-Castell, and he's got a nice green background here, and there's some colors in these scales. And there's another one from Otto. This is the sliding Gunter rule here. And here's a loop, a magnifying glass, and in the background is a map. So it's kind of indicating how these components were used together to navigate. Here's 3 Trogers. I have a number of Trogers in my collection, and I like them because of the color. And I have 3 sizes, so I decided I'd display all 3 in the same photograph. So you can see that this is the smallest, which is held in the hand easily. This is a larger desktop. And this one is for it reads in the materials that came with the Troger. It's for the people who have trouble seeing, the hard of seeing. So everything is larger, but they're all used the same. Whoops, what happened here? Uh-oh. I may have pushed this button back here. So let's find out.
No fast forward.
You're getting close. Okay, I can take it. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, and here's three of the opalettes from France, just showing the nature. It's a nice composition. I could have done a lot better. I've got shadows in here, and you really need to have very effective lighting for taking quality photographs of instruments like this. Here is a sector, and if you just show a sector all alone, it doesn't tell you a lot, but in this case, I have a pair of dividers on top of them, and it shows that you need these dividers to make any calculation on this sector. It's a brass sector. It's French, from maybe 1800 sometime. This is a rare circular slide rule. This is Gebrüder Fromm. I actually bought this on eBay. It came from Austria, and it was made in Austria about 1920. And so I show it. Actually, I took a little bit of a oblique photograph. This is a very heavy instrument. I think it's 8 kilos, 10 kilograms. It's made of cast metal, and it has celluloid scale surfaces, and this ring rotates inside the outer two rings, and there are two indicators to make calculations and a magnifying glass also to help. Give you an idea of scale, these are Fowler long scale slide rules and a pocket watch slide rule. So it's quite large. I managed to take it home in a suitcase, and I don't know how I'm going. If I sell it, I don't know how I'm going to get it to anybody. But it comes in a wooden box. This is one of my favorite things to do with my slide rule collection, and I put them on display in my house and also in our local library at a museum for industry that's not too far away from me at my former place of employment. And I try to create a display that has a number of different shapes and sizes of slide rules. I can talk a little bit about some of them here. Of course, here is our figurine from Italy. He's standing there, and this is the French calculograph. Here again are epaulettes. This is maybe a 20-meter, I can't remember which one it is, Rechenwalze. Here's a smaller Loga Rechenwalze. Here's a Fuller. And these are the three French cylindrical slide rules with helical scales on them. So I like to do that composition in my displays. So we'll go back to that first one, that Henry Sutton slide rule that was made for a king. At least the astrolabe was made for a king, and who knows where this one went. Now, if you remember, it did not have any indicators on it for calculating because they were all missing. Even though this is in pristine condition, they must have separated the components for the astrolabe and the indicators for the circular slide rule. They must have separated them at one time, and they got lost. Yeah, maybe you know.
I forgot the book. I had to tell you. Actually, it's an astrolabe. They use it in the book, in the inventory, as something as a rack. But it has that beautiful quality.
Yes, yes.
That listed it anyhow and provided fine photos. Yeah? So actually, something happened to that instrument. So anything on both sides lost. It's just the body. Just the body
of the instrument.
Yeah.
So I felt that it needed to have some arms, and at least. And so I actually photocopied this from. It comes from the John Brown slide rule that's in the British Museum, and I enlarged it, of course. I mounted. For this project, I got a high-resolution photo. For the image that I had showed you before at the beginning is a low-resolution photo, and it can be shown for free. And really, for the high-resolution photos, you're supposed to pay a fee to the museum. So I've taken some liberties with this, and maybe Carl's going to have to answer for it. I don't know. But I wanted to show you. And I've mounted. I had a print shop print out a full-size copy of the scale, enlarge it to the same size as the original, and I glued it to a thin board, and I cut out the board to fit all these parts of the slide rule, and then I actually put the cursor on the indicators. They don't work. They're glued to this, so it's only for display purposes. But I actually glued the copies of these indicators on a thin board also, and I cut that out. So there is a little bit of shadow from these, so they look more original. And anyhow, I have fun with that. I've done this with all the early slide rules that I have from the British museums, the Science Museum, and the Greenwich, the meeting in Greenwich, and one in Oxford. And all of those have very early slide rules. The earliest one, by the way, is dated 1635. This is in Oughtred's time, and it's when Oughtred is designing spiral slide rules. So I have a lot of fun with these, and I put them on display this way. I think that is all. Yes?
Thank you. Said differently, Shakespeare's plays. That's the plan for next year. When? Well, it's always sometime in September, at a date very similar to this year, namely 21st and 22nd of September 2018. So everybody, please take out your calendars, your agendas, and write it down. What? Yeah. So, and again, we have a theme, and if it's Shakespeare's plays, it has to be something with that. So it's from sonnets to sums. Okay, you know what to do. Everybody, pick out, go to the bookshop, read your Shakespeare again, find good quotes to make nice presentations. Yeah. Everybody has to do so. So you recognize the quotes you're presenting, please. Yeah, very. It's at the Stratford Hotel. The Brit and the English have also a sort of tradition, namely to make a display that is to call out and for people and bring along their specific thing for this theme, for display, and that is early British rules and secondly long scale rules. So again, dates we need, a certain notice to intend the paper so that they know what's going on, deadlines and all that. And the important thing is they're really hurried to have those things, everything ready. You can read that all on the website. But first, I have to give a warning or an information. First, there is this place, Stratford upon Avon, south of Birmingham. That's the place. But there are several other Stratfords in Britain. Please, Stratford upon Avon. What else is on the map? There is a place called Milton Keynes, which is actually not meant, but a place nearby. Actually, a place nearby is something about here. Yes. Where we already have been in 2012, namely Bletchley Park. And this is just a reminder, anybody traveling to Britain, that they have there the National Museum Computing, and of course there's also a display by the UK SRC, by the UK slide rule collector. So go along there, have a look even more, and if you've been there, just a refresher, because lots of that is refreshed because many things there belonged to Colin Burns and were sold a year ago. So, plan your trip. This is a view of the hotel. And most important is, next to the date you wrote in your notes, that you write down this web address, this URL, UKSRC or UK, you should know that, and IM 2018.